Good morning everyone, and welcome to this, as introduced, our second part of our webinar series today. We're looking at what is a continually changing legislative environment for the provision of pre- and post-retirement advice, and I thought we'd focus very particularly on those advice opportunities. As introduced, this is the second component, following on from our session a fortnight ago where we talked about the challenges of retirement planning, looking at the risks in retirement and different ways of dealing with those particular risks. Today, I'll look at that changing legislative environment, and just a brief reminder, the third part of the series, we'll look at what I think is the most interesting component of that, where we'll go about testing the sustainability of different retirement income strategies and share with you some of the tools and techniques that you might have available for answering the question about whether or not a strategy is sustainable over the lifetime of a client through their retirement. So agenda for today is a very simple one. We'll be talking about legislative change, and I'll provide a brief introduction to this concept of income layering, which we'll look at more fully in the final session, and in fact test the sustainability of income layering strategies in the final session, along with a whole range of alternative strategies. But a brief introduction to this concept of income layering. So, to legislative change, a whole lot of legislative change, and I'm not going to go back a whole long way. I'll briefly recap a number of measures that have been operative prior to this financial year. I'll certainly have a look into more detail at those measures effective the 1st of July this year, and also a brief look forward to legislative change on the near-term horizon. If I go back to just the 1st of January 2017 with the rebalancing of the assets test, we saw that some clients are still feeling the effect of those changes today, and it's certainly not a week goes by that we wouldn't look at different ways of evaluating, for example, say drawdown strategies on an account-based income stream affected by 1 January 2017 changes with advice implemented prior to that date. We know that 1 January 2017 saw some clients unaffected by this change. Absolutely get that. Full pensioners remain full pensioners. Full self-funded retirees remain full self-funded retirees. But there were other changes that occurred. We saw some clients become full age pensioners, get more age pension. We saw some clients lose some age pension, and certainly it's those clients that the effect of 1 January 2017 is still being felt for. So we saw some clients lose, $1,000 a year. We saw some clients lose more, and in fact, the most significant impact was felt by those clients at the upper assets test, what is now the cut-off, losing more than $14,000 a year worth of age pension. And certainly, why I mention this is that those clients who had originally put in place strategies for drawing down income in retirement, who found themselves simply topping up their income lost to age pension assets test threshold changes by drawing more from their account-based income streams, and now a couple of years later, still drawing those higher level of payments than originally projected. I'll introduce you in our next session to a tool that we make available that lets you test how sustainable current drawdown levels of account-based income stream strategies are. And certainly, I think it's fair to say that if you'd originally modelled a certain level of drawdowns and a client's drawing $5,000, $10,000 or $14,000 a year more than you originally modelled, in most cases it's going to make an impact, in some cases a significant impact to the sustainability of that income stream over time. So we'll come back and we'll test that with some of the models that we have available. We saw on the 1st of July 2017 superannuation contribution rules changes and the introduction of the $1.6 million transfer balance cap, and still each week I would deal with questions from advisors around the practicalities of those particular issues. I think practically it's fair to say that it's easier to get money into superannuation today than it was back at 1 January 2017 or 1 July 2017, certainly even before that. It's harder to get significant amounts into superannuation. I'll have a look at some of the freeing up of the super contribution rules as we move through our session today. The $1.6 million transfer balance cap absolutely still impacts clients, and capping the amount that we can transfer into the tax-free retirement phase of superannuation has materially changed strategies for higher net wealth clients. And again, we'll have a look at the impact of that, but I would highlight a couple of practicalities that we come across Today, relative simplicity as far as administration is concerned, no different. If I'm commencing an account-based income stream, a lifetime annuity or a term annuity, effectively it's the same amount that counts towards the $1.6 million transfer balance cap. Certainly some practicalities of things like death benefits. The practicalities of those we deal with on a regular basis. Case that I'm working with recently, we saw a husband and wife client, for example, commence benefits well within their $1.6 million transfer balance cap. Give or take, he had about $900,000 worth of account-based income stream. She had about $800,000 worth of account-based income stream. Nowhere near $1.6 million until he went and died. Broadly, the consequences of his death with a reversionary income stream, his income stream did revert to her. A 12-month period in which there was not a reassessment for transfer balance cap, but effectively, come that 12-month anniversary, that client's spouse has a decision to make. She's got two income streams. There are differences in which she can withdraw benefits and roll them back to a superannuation environment. If, for example, she chose to manage the excess balance with her original account-based income stream, she could either take that amount as a lump sum or roll back to superannuation. Limited opportunity for managing that with what is now a reverted income stream from the late husband. In those circumstances, the only alternative would be, if we choose to use that particular benefit, would be to effectively take a lump sum from the superannuation system completely. So please be aware of those practicalities. Some of these other ones I'm going to take a little bit more of a look at, and I've built some slides to assist us with that particular process. So, in chronological order, innovative super income streams. Innovative super income streams have been available since the 1st of July 2017, but I think it's fair to say they've been relatively quietly brought to market since then. There was some uncertainty around the Social Security means testing assessment of innovative superannuation income streams, and that saw some delay in product launch and certainly significant delays in take-up of these sorts of income streams. That uncertainty is now removed. So since the 1st of July this year, we have certainty around the means testing of innovative superannuation income streams. So what are these things? Innovative super income streams are a new set of regulations that allow superannuation funds to offer a tax-free retirement phase income stream to a client that's met a retirement condition of release to effectively commence a tax-free retirement phase income stream. And you may be saying, well, hang on a sec, that's what an account-based pension does. And that is true. These are like account-based pensions in that they are tax-free retirement phase income streams. There is a significant difference, however. Unlike an account-based income stream to which CIS minimums apply, CIS minimums do not apply to innovative superannuation income streams. So we're talking a tax-free retirement phase income stream to which the CIS minimums don't apply. And that certainly presents some interesting financial planning opportunities going forward. I think it's fair to say, however, that these aren't without restrictions. And in as opposed to limiting income payments by way of CIS minimums, an innovative superannuation income stream limits access to capital. And this is the way that it does it. Effectively, these are broad legislative restrictions on capital. And there are two of them that I'll talk through briefly. The first is the green straight non-dotted line that goes from 100% to zero over what happens to be, in this case, the life expectancy for a 65-year-old male client. This is an extract from the original Treasury consultation paper on innovative super income streams, and what this shows is the reducing voluntary access capital that a client has that chooses to use the innovative rules. And so that broadly means that if you invest your money today, you can get it back tomorrow. But if you invest today and leave it there for a period equal to, say, half of life expectancy, there'd only be access to half of capital. If you left it there to life expectancy or beyond, there'd be no access to capital from that point onwards. No restrictions on income payments, but restrictions on access to capital. So income payments could start during that period. They could start day one, they could start later, and they could continue beyond life expectancy, in fact, for as long as the client lives. So no restrictions on income, but reducing access to capital over life expectancy. The dotted line across the top of this chart is the second of these restrictions, and broadly this relates to access to capital in the event of death. So this would be a death payment either to a nominated beneficiary, beneficiaries, or the estate. And what this allows is the rules provide for a death benefit equal to up to 100% of the amount invested to be paid to the estate or nominated beneficiaries in the event of the death of the client within a period equal to half of life expectancy. And this is designed, it was introduced to address that concern that many Australian retirees and pre-retirees had about investing in this type of income stream and getting hit by that proverbial bus. So I make an investment today, and a couple of years down the track, I'm hit by that proverbial bus, I die, and my estate loses the lot. This is clearly not the case. And these allow, in that circumstance, that unfortunate circumstance, a death benefit equal to 100% of the amount invested to be paid to the estate in those circumstances. So a couple of protections that provide some degree of flexibility for clients investing in those circumstances. So that's your broad legislative restrictions. The availability of products to be designed within these, I think, is extremely broad. Challenger have brought products to market, and they're available to you via Hub24, including, for example, this. This is a product that we built that matches those particular requirements. This happens to be an innovative superannuation income stream featuring deferred income payments. So it's a deferred lifetime annuity. Looks like our ordinary lifetime annuity, reducing access to capital over life expectancy, guaranteed death benefit equal to 100% of purchase price for a period of equal to half of life expectancy. The only difference here is that you and the client would agree when payments start. The longer the deferral, the higher the payments when they subsequently commence for the same purchase price in those circumstances. So I think this presents some really interesting opportunities, either the opportunity to provide a higher level of guaranteed income when those payments subsequently commence, or perhaps reverse engineered. If a client was looking for a certain level of guaranteed income, and we'll come back to this concept later and again in our next session of income layering, if a client needed, say, $100 a week worth of lifetime income, if they were looking to invest today, it might cost them, $100,000, $110,000. If they were prepared to defer commencement of those payments for 3 years, 5 years, maybe a longer term, the amount invested of investment required would be more modest, and effectively that would leave more assets available to be invested by say, an account-based income stream, more flexibility perhaps for the client, more opportunity for advice over those residual assets in that particular circumstance. So I think there's some really interesting opportunities. This is one product that's available. It's not the only product design that's possible. We, for example, offer guaranteed payments. The legislation doesn't require guaranteed payments. We simply offer them in these circumstances. So I think you'll see a whole lot of product development in this particular space over the months and years ahead. So really, really exciting space for this particular opportunity. Next change that I wanted to talk about was the concept of downsizer contributions. Now, I think it's fair to say that perhaps the success of these types of contributions caught some unawares. In the year to 30 June this year, more than $1 billion worth of contributions have been made to the Australian superannuation system using downsizer contributions. More than 4,200 individuals have made contributions to Australian super funds using the downsizer measures, and a whole lot of those clients were previously ineligible to contribute to the superannuation system. This is reopening the superannuation system for those clients that have been perhaps locked out for years or perhaps decades because of their age. So those clients who are over 65 and otherwise unable to make contributions into superannuation. So really exciting opportunity for those older clients. Broadly, this is a bit different to other types of superannuation contributions. Yes, there's an age restriction, but unlike most super contributions, which are limited to an upper age of 65 without gainful employment, 75 with some gainful employment, we simply have a minimum age requirement for eligibility for downsizer superannuation contributions. You've got to be at least 65 years of age in order to be able to use these particular provisions. There are some hurdles you need to jump through, absolutely. You've got to sell a property that requires that meets eligibility for the CGT main residence exemption. Got to be held for at least 10 years prior to its disposal. So absolutely get that there are restrictions that apply. But where a client meets those requirements, the opportunity to be able to transfer up to $300,000 of those proceeds, or up to $600,000 for a couple who are selling a home that they own, I think is a significant opportunity for advice going forward. Couple of things that I'll mention. No work test requirement, so don't need to worry about getting gainful employment for these clients if they meet the other requirements. The contribution itself does not count towards their contribution caps, so no concessional or non-concessional contribution caps, and I would highlight the client isn't eligible to claim tax deduction for a contribution made under this particular mechanism, but that's not the purpose of these anyway in that particular case, and there's some paperwork that's required. So time limits in relation to making the contribution and the paperwork required. But where a client utilises these provisions, they can set up a very tax-effective retirement phase income stream, and that can certainly sustain income through their retirement. I'll give you a quick application, and this is perhaps an atypical application of these types of rules, but I think the bread and butter has been done and dusted. So a different way of looking at these particular rules. We've got a client, couple age 66, recently retired. So that broadly would in most cases deal them out, given how close we are into this new financial year, of making superannuation contributions under any other arrangement. We would need gainful employment in order to make ordinary non-concessional superannuation contributions. They're looking to purchase an apartment off the plan. They're intending to sell their home for $950,000. The $900,000 apartment that they're looking will give them 50 grand worth of proceeds. And you might be going, well, hang on a sec. There's not really an application here except for a very modest application. They've got a couple of kids and they've already got superannuation assets. And this is where it starts to get, I think, a little bit interesting. They've got superannuation assets that include a taxable component. And I think it's fair to say most Australians are keen to avoid $1 in tax if they can avoid that $1 in tax. And this is a strategy to avoid tax for beneficiaries. And so certainly I also think it's fair to say that this one rankles a few retirees. The fact that superannuation death benefits on which tax has already been paid might be further subject to tax when it's paid to an adult child beneficiary, for example. Here's one way that we could perhaps use downsizer contributions to minimise or avoid that tax that would otherwise be payable in those circumstances. So that's the context for this particular client. How could these clients use downsizer superannuation contributions? Effectively, a withdrawal of their superannuation assets, which we are taking taxable and tax-free components out of the superannuation system. Because these clients are at least 65 years of age, that withdrawal is available completely tax-free. They recontribute $300,000 each as a downsizer contribution, subject to all of the rules and requirements being satisfied. And effectively what they then have is they've replaced their previously taxable and tax-free superannuation benefit with a completely tax-free superannuation benefit. They commence an income stream with that. Any income stream death benefit subsequently paid to either a spouse, which would in all circumstances be tax-free anyway, or an adult child beneficiary would now be tax-free. And that's the savings that we've made in those circumstances. So think laterally around applications of those particular strategies. I think there's some interesting opportunities that they present. The next one I think is a really interesting measure. The ability that we now have to carry forward and use in subsequent years for some clients unused concessional superannuation contributions can be really useful for your pre-retirement clients, and in particular those clients who are otherwise realising assets on which there would be assessable income through realisation of a capital gain. So I think there's some really interesting opportunities here. Let's have a look at one of those. A quick recap of the rules. Effectively, these rules allow me to accrue on or after the 1st of July 2018 any unused concessional superannuation contributions. So we've got modest concessional caps. I get that. 25 grand a year, a modest limit. But if a client's not fully utilising all of those amounts since the 1st of July 2018, they can carry them forward. They can carry them forward for up to 5 years. They have been able since the 1st of July this year, so 1 July 2018, I can accrue. 1 July 19, I can start to use my unused carry forward concessional superannuation contributions. And effectively, subject to a total super balance that I have of less than $500,000 at the immediate prior 30 June, I can use those unused concessional contributions in my current year to offset other taxable income. And effectively, that can be quite useful. So, theoretically, if I don't use any of them, I can, five lots of $25,000 can roll up to be a large one-off concessional superannuation contribution at a time. So, quick example. John and Mary, both age 60, jointly owned holiday property, and that's key to this particular case. Otherwise, these clients probably don't have a whole lot of assessable income that we need to manage. But John's earning 40 grand, Mary's already retired. He's planning to retire in 2021. They're planning to sell the property in 2021 for $600,000. Here's the rub. Cost base of 150, giving them each $112,000 worth of assessable capital gain. Come what may, with no deductions, that's going to give rise to a tax liability at that particular point of disposal. So we've sat down, we've worked through the strategy, we've decided that it makes sense to dispose of the property, and we're looking to get the proceeds into some form of structure that provides us with a retirement income stream. But there is a cost. That cost is the capital gains tax that's payable in those particular circumstances. So let's have a look at an application for these clients of the unused concessional superannuation contribution rules. I have skipped one of the assumptions there. Clients have only got 200 grand worth of superannuation each, so they are eligible to use these particular measures. So, first things first, this financial year, John's got employment income. He has concessional super contributions in the form of super guarantee contributions of $3,800. He's got a concessional contribution cap of 25 grand. That gives him an unused concessional contribution amount this year, $21,200. Mary's not employed this year and she does not make a personal deductible super contribution. Therefore, of her $25,000 cap, she uses none. She carries forward $25,000. So we carry $21,200 and $25,000 into next financial year. John continues employment. He has the same $25,000 cap. He has another $3,800 worth of concessional super contribution. So another $21,200. Mary's got the same $25,000 that she can carry forward. So effectively, you see in year 2, John had $46,200. He's only used $3,800. Mary had $50,000. She hasn't used any. She carries forward her full $25,000 for the next year. And effectively, you see the effect that this starts to have. Concessional contribution has quickly ratcheted up for John to effectively an amount of $67,400. So 21.2 adds to his $25,000 that effectively gives him $67,400 that he can use to offset the capital gains tax that would have otherwise, the capital gain that would have otherwise been included in his assessable income from the disposal of the holiday home in that circumstance. Mary, having not used any of her $25,000 concessional contributions in years 1 and 2, can in year 3 use the full $75,000 that she has at her disposal to offset that. Her capital gain effectively reduced quite significantly, just to $37,500. So carry forward concessional contributions in the lead up to retirement could, I think, be quite useful for offsetting assessable income from assets like an investment property, like a holiday home, like shares that are perhaps being restructured into either a different structure or sold and replaced with other assets in that period. Next measure that I wanted to have a look at was a freeing up of the superannuation work test. And I said earlier, I think it's easier perhaps to get money into superannuation today than it has been at any point in the past. And this is one of the measures that gives me some comfort towards justifying that statement. It is a limited measure. I think it's fair to say there's bigger change on the way as far as these changes are concerned. But for those clients who qualify, and to qualify, you need to be aged between 65 to 74. You need to effectively cease work. This gives you an extra 12 months in which to make additional superannuation contributions if you have a total super balance of less than $300,000. So the previous measure that I talked about was less than $500,000. This is less than $300,000, just to keep things nice and simple. Not really, but less than $300,000 with a total super balance, I'm able to make an additional contribution into the superannuation system for up to 12 months after I otherwise would have been. I've seen plenty of clients come to advisors after the end of the financial year in which they'd previously ceased work. And in previous years, unfortunately, those clients, if they were 65 plus, were not able to make further contributions without going back to gainful employment. These rules change that for those clients, and this is the first year that these rules have been operational. Operational since the 1st of July this year. This will allow clients who retired last year that otherwise meet these particular requirements to make contributions into superannuation. So some more flexibility for those clients. This is not to be confused with what I think is a broader measure, really exciting measure, yet to be legislated, but effectively this measure, which is here, announced in this year's federal budget but doesn't apply until 1 July 2020, so next financial year, will allow any client less than age pension age, so 65-year-olds and 66-year-olds, to be able to contribute to superannuation. I think this is a really exciting freeing up of the superannuation contribution rules without limits on total super balance, but doesn't start, unfortunately, until next financial year. So watch this space. A bit of legislation to get through. This is one of those the government looking to get through. Next measure that I thought we'd mention is the expansion of the government's pension loan scheme that was expanded from the 1st of July this year. This was an already existing government measure. What they've simply done is expanded its application, and I think it has made it significantly broader in its application. The pension loan scheme is effectively a reverse mortgage type arrangement funded by the government. It is different from some other commercially available reverse mortgage type arrangements in that it does not provide access to lump sums. You can't use this measure to fix the roof on the house with $100,000 that you borrowed in the equity in that property. This does not do that. This measure specifically provides additional income payment. And the way that it does that is effectively provides top-up age pension payments. Previously, the measure only allowed clients to top up their age pension to the maximum rate of age pension. So if I was receiving a part age pension, it allowed me to top up my rate of age pension to the maximum. If I was already receiving the maximum, for example, it didn't allow me to borrow anything because I was already at the maximum in those circumstances. The new measure, the expanded measure, is significantly more attractive because it allows clients to borrow up to 150% of the maximum rate of age pension. So let's take a single client who has, over the course of her retirement, depleted her other financial investments. She's now eligible for the full rate of age pension. Let's round that out. It's about 24 grand. So she's living on 24 grand, and I think it's fair to say life's tough on 24 grand. Some people can do it, other people struggle on $24,000, and I certainly get why it's a struggle. That's hard. So struggling on $24,000 a year, living in a property, and it's a property in most places in Australia, and it's worth a decent whack of coin. This will effectively allow this client to draw an additional income of up to 12 grand a year. So she can top up her payment to a maximum rate of 150% of the payment. So effectively, instead of living on 24 grand in retirement, could, by creating a debt, it is a debt, current rate of interest is 5.25% per annum, and effectively draw an extra 12 grand a year. And I think it's fair to say the difference in lifestyle on 36 versus 24 is a significant difference in retirement. I don't expect the whole lot of clients are going to be lining up at their local Centrelink office to go and borrow money. They've spent their lives paying off debt. Perhaps a generation, if any, that's concerned about taking on further debt would be this generation. And so certainly, while I don't anticipate a whole lot of clients will look to use this particular measure, I think it does provide for those clients who have depleted their retirement assets a safety net that is available in that circumstance. True anecdote, I don't do a whole lot of client presentations. I've done a couple over the course of the last month. True story, I raised the concept of the pension loan scheme. I had an interesting question from a client in the audience, and he said, should I tell my kids? I think it's fair to say there wasn't a whole lot of consensus in that room when I put that question to the broader audience. I think it's an interesting topic as to whether or not you raise that with the client, and ultimately it's their call about that. But I think it's fair to say in that audience there were about 50% of clients that were saying, yeah, we tell the kids. About 50% were saying, no way in the world are we going to tell the kids. That raises some interesting planning consequences a little bit later, but I think an interesting measure. Government estimating about 6,000 clients will take up the expanded pension loan scheme over the next 4 years. So not a whole lot of take-up expected, but I think a useful safety net for some clients in those circumstances. Next measure, I think a really exciting one, and I say that for reasons other than the fact that I happen to work for Challenger, but I think the means testing rules for lifetime income streams, which came through effective from the 1st of July this year, present a significant opportunity for advice. There is the opportunity for clients to immediately increase their age pension by applying part of their retirement assets to the structure that is a lifetime income stream. For those of you that remember the days of either 50% asset test exempt income streams or 100% asset test exempt income streams and the financial planning advice opportunities that they presented, this is a reinvention of those rules. They're different, I get that, and I'll go to the rules shortly. They're slightly more complicated, they're slightly more flexible in other ways as well in terms of the product design that's available, but I think they present the same opportunity for clients through a strategic application. So by applying a different amount of assets to a different structure could result in a different age pension outcome for those clients. I think that's a really exciting opportunity. So these rules don't affect the means testing of account-based income streams. They don't affect the means testing of, say, term income stream, including term annuities. They don't affect defined benefit income streams. They don't affect grandfathered pre-1 July 2019 lifetime income streams. These rules particularly affect a lifetime income stream commenced on or after 1 July this year. Full grandfathering for pre-1 July 2019 lifetime income streams. But where a client commences a lifetime income stream on or after the 1st of July this year, there's one of two possible age pension means test assessments that could be applied. And this is based on the product features of the particular lifetime income stream that we are talking about in a particular situation. The first category of product is those products that meet the declining capital access schedule, or the innovative super income stream rules that I introduced earlier. And remember, they look a bit like this. I'm showing you here an immediate lifetime annuity now. I showed you a deferred lifetime annuity earlier. An immediate lifetime annuity can also meet these rules. In this particular case, it's an example of a product, it's a Challenger product available via the Hub24 platform, and effectively what this allows is immediate payments payable for life of the client, meeting the declining capital access schedule. Where you have a lifetime income stream that meets these requirements commenced on or after the 1st of July this year, just 60% of the income from this particular income stream will count under the income test. So the days of worrying about deduction amounts, doing the calculations, no longer relevant. If an income stream, for example, was paying $5,000 a year, maths is dead simple, $3,000 a year counts. 60% counts under the income test for that particular income stream. The second thing that I'd highlight is the assets test outcome. Just 60% of the purchase price of this income stream will count as an asset through to age 84 or for a minimum of 5 years, and then only 30% will count as an asset thereafter. So I put 100 in, only 60 counts. And the maths of that is pretty interesting from an advice perspective. If I am assets test sensitive, every $1,000 worth of assets that I've got over and above the lower assets test threshold is reducing my age pension by $3 per fortnight. That $3 per fortnight is $78 per annum. If I was to reduce my assessable assets by $1,000, the opposite occurs. My age pension goes up, and it goes up by that same amount. goes up by $3 a fortnight or $78 per annum. And that can bring some interesting sorts of applications. If I was, for example, investing $100,000 into a lifetime income stream, so I've got, say, a total portfolio for a client worth 600 grand, and I'm allocating 100 grand into a lifetime income stream. The difference in age pension for this client is real. A client who is assets test sensitive, who invests 100 grand in a lifetime income stream, reduces their assessable assets by 40 grand because only 60% is assessable. That 40 grand assessment effectively increases their age pension by 40 lots of $78 or $3,120 per annum. So effectively, by simply holding some of my defensive assets, instead of holding them in an account-based income stream, I hold them in a lifetime income stream. So effectively replacing defensive with defensive, just a different structure. Effectively, my age pension goes up by $3,120. That's the sort of benefit that this can bring. In addition to that, there's any product return that comes off that in those circumstances. I think a really interesting opportunity going forward. There is a second category of products that's available. It's entirely possible in a post-1 July 2019 environment to offer a lifetime income stream that features higher death benefits or higher withdrawal values. And I'll give you an example of a product that does that. We have a lifetime income stream that features what we call a 15-year withdrawal guarantee benefit. And effectively that allows a client for the first 15 years to have access to capital. And in fact, it guarantees an amount of capital at the 15-year anniversary of that particular arrangement, provides a guaranteed death benefit through the entire 15-year period as well. And effectively, that product will be attractive to clients who prioritise access to capital. It's fair to say, though, that from a social security perspective, this is less concessionally treated because if you have a higher withdrawal value or if you have a higher death benefit, Social Security, where this commences on or after the 1st of July this year, will assess that higher value as an asset. And this is the way that it works. Under the income test, exactly the same treatment, 60% is assessable. But from an assets test perspective, where you have a higher death benefit or a higher withdrawal value, it's the greater of the 60-30 test that I previously introduced, or the value of any current or future surrender value, or the value of any current or future death benefit that's actually treated as an asset. So just bear in mind, if you've got a 15-year withdrawal guarantee equal to 100% of purchase price, that's going to count as an asset for the first 15 years of that particular holding period. So if you're interested in this, happy to get out to you a tech paper issued by Challenge Tech this month that addresses the financial planning applications of this type of structure. I think a really exciting opportunity. The next change is into the future. So what we've talked about today up until this point is law. This change, however, is not yet legislated. And this is the concept of the government being partway through its legislative agenda for retirement income streams. So if you look at this broad context, the government announced a couple of years back now this concept of a retirement income framework. It included innovative super income stream. It included certainty around means testing. Government's delivered both of those measures. It also included this concept known as a retirement income covenant, and also the concept of a comprehensive income product for retirement. It's fair to say that both of those were perhaps disturbed by the calling of the last election. Government had not got these measures through the legislative agenda up until that point. And we have not seen a recommitment from the government post-election to either of these measures. So I'm going to put that proviso over these two measures. These are subject to the legislative process, could change through this process. And we all know there's a slated review of retirement income more broadly to be developed. So the first unlegislated component of the government's retirement income framework is this concept known as the retirement income covenant. I think it's a pretty obvious sort of measure. I think it's fair to say that superannuation fund trustees generally give a whole lot of consideration to the retirement income objectives of their members. It's fair to say most trustees are deadly serious about what retirement income looks like for members of their superannuation funds. What this would do, however, is impose a legal obligation on those trustees to give due consideration to those objectives. So it would be an increase in the law, the legal obligation for super fund trustees to consider the objectives of members and broadly to consider and develop a retirement income strategy for those members. And this would apply to all superannuation funds. All Australian super funds would be required to develop this framework for their members, from small to very, very large. So individual self-managed superannuation funds, retail superannuation funds, wrap platforms, all the way through to the largest corporate super funds and industry superannuation funds. So broadly, consider the retirement income objectives of their members. And many super funds will say, hand on heart, we do that today. This is where it starts to get slightly interesting though. It may also require, for larger superannuation funds, the development of a comprehensive income product for retirement. And that's the CIPR, Comprehensive Income Product for Retirement, that I mentioned here on this particular slide. And broadly what that is, it's a combination of income streams that address each of the retirement risks for most members, including some allocation to a lifetime or a deferred lifetime product to meet longevity risk for members. I think it's fair to say, with a 2022 proposed commencement date, some water yet to flow under the bridge as far as that's concerned, but something to be aware of in that particular space. I think an interesting development. Final component for me this morning is this concept, a brief introduction to the concept of income layering, which we'll set up for testing in our session in a fortnight from now. But broadly, income layering, a philosophy, if you will, for constructing retirement income to address some of the concerns of a client in retirement. I think it's fair to say I introduced the concept of risks in retirement in our last session. I won't dwell here. I think it's fair to say that there is uncertainty. It's obvious to say there's uncertainty in the retirement income time frame for investing. I know as a 65-year-old that on average, as a 65-year-old male, I might have, if I'm using enhanced life expectancy, 22 or 23 years to live in retirement. But I don't know when I'm going to die through my retirement. It could be next year, and this slide shows actual deaths in the period 2010-12 for clients aged 65 plus. We see that clients died at 65 in that period 2010-12. We see that they died at 66 and 67 and 68. We see a whole lot more clients, however, die in their 80s and 90s, and we see some clients live out to a very, very old age, beyond age 100. And so certainly it's that uncertainty that brings some difficulty in planning. So we know that we need to plan for a long time, but retirement could last any amount of time in retirement. We also need to know that for some clients, life on the age pension alone will be unsustainable. Here we see age pension rates for a single and couple at $24,000 and $36,000 per annum, and yet immediately below that I contrast that with the ASPA retirement standards for both modest and comfortable. If I take a couple age pension rate of income in retirement, just 36 grand, ASPA modest lifestyle, nearly 40 grand. So, a gap there alone. This is broadly, let's reverse engineer this. I think it's fair to say you could be struggling for comfort on age pension income alone, and certainly age pension goes nowhere near what ASPA estimates a comfortable lifestyle at more than $61,000 for a couple will cost in retirement. Here's where the layering concept, I think, can work quite neatly, and this is effectively providing a client with a level of income over and above that age pension, broadly determining what their level of comfort requires. That might be nothing. It might be $500, it might be $1,000, it might be 5 grand, 10 grand, or it might be more in those circumstances. And effectively, by prioritising assets to an income stream that can sustain that level of income, meeting our basic or essential spending requirements through retirement, I think we can provide what I would consider to be a sustainable income stream strategy for retirement. We'll come back in a fortnight and test the sustainability of different strategies for clients going forward. In summary today, a whole lot of legislative change occurred. A whole lot more on the horizon, and I think this presents significant opportunities for your advice for your pre and post-retirement clients. I think I'll demonstrate in the next session that there are plenty of ways for constructing retirement income streams, but absolutely there are also ways of testing how sustainable the residual income is in different sets of market circumstances, and we'll test those going forward. So we'll look at strategies for delivering sustainable income. We'll look at testing those retirement income strategies, and I'll introduce you to a tool that's available to you that will allow you to test those in different market scenarios going forward.